I can not seem to get rid of the background. And I'm like, wait, I
Oh,
bought the pro account now. And I'm like, wait.
all right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Usually I will be streaming live at the same time. And on this session, I'm the technical difficulties. So I will just repost the video a little bit later, but let me turn off that piece so that it's not taking the juice. All right, awesome. Well, today is going to be all about creating urgency and overcoming buyer reluctance, right? And so as we've been making our calls, and if you've been reaching out, that first tier of individuals that you're going to be reaching out to was specifically the database, right? It was more so your database. And from database, we've pivoted over to past leads, whether that's our buyer leads, whether that's our seller leads. That's that next segment of it. And if you're like most people, more than likely right now you're getting a bit of buyer reluctance, right? We talked a lot about seller reluctance and creating urgency for sellers last week. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on the buyers. Now, the quote that he starts off, and I thought this was, I like this quote, it's a Jim Rohn quote. He says, if someone is going down the wrong road, he doesn't need motivation to speed him up. He needs education to turn him around, right? Jim Rohn. So if somebody is going down the wrong road, he doesn't need motivation to speed him up. He needs education to turn him around. And I thought this was really an interesting way to kind of start, because when we talk about, a shifting market, and we talk about a change like this, right? We're looking at what is the opportunity that exists in this type of market. And the irony is that when we go into a shifted market, right? When we go into a shifted market, we start experiencing a lot of buyer reluctance. And yet the irony is that the opportunity tends to be higher for buyers, right? In any type of shifted market, the opportunity tends to be higher, and yet buyer urgency tends to hit an all-time low. And part of this is because of the role that the media plays. So the media comes in and they start sharing about what's going on in the market, and they become a purveyor of the negative news. They share uninformed advice, and it almost feels sometimes like that's the only thing that the buyers are buying, right? They're buying the bad news. They're buying the misinformation instead of really having an understanding of what's going on in the market. The other piece of that that's really important is that, we may have certain things that when we're looking at the news, we tend to see a lot of news that is coming down that might be nationally based. And yet we know that from a local perspective, every single one of our markets is different, right? We're not on the basis, we don't operate on the basis of exactly what happens at a national level, especially considering the fact that we are a more urban area. We're a little bit more of that metropolis. So the activity that we tend to have as a county, as a state, tends to be different than what's usually going on at the national level. The trends tend to be a little bit different. So our goal at the end of the day, when it comes to working with our buyers, is we have to really become educators and help guide them away from the fear that is somewhat stopping them or immobilizing them, right? And so that's really, really important for us to know. So on page 168, he says that buyers can easily lose sight of the primary reason driving their home purchase, right? This gets back to the motivation. And this is where we talk about when you're looking for your buyers that are ready, willing, and motivated, are you truly getting to the heart of the motivation of what was inspiring them to buy in the first place? And if you are you coming back to that enough? Because we know that logic makes people think, emotion makes people act. So the emotion that they're feeling right now is no longer tied to the original motivation they had. The emotion is tied to the news that's making them overthink what's going on, and it's giving them that emotion of fear. Whereas in reality, the motivation that may have been initially driving their home purchase, it could be that they wanted to move into a different neighborhood. It could be a better school district. It could be proximity to work or recreation. It might be that they were looking for a different floor plan, that they wanted more space or less space. It might be, it could be that they're relocating, right? There's many different reasons. And so we really need to become very good at bringing our clients back to the motivation that was moving them in the first place, and not let them stay hyper focused on what tends to happen when there's a shift. They get very hyper focused on price and price alone, right? They get really hyper focused on price. And so there are two types of buyers when it comes to this issue of timing. There's those that they believe they can time the market, right? And there's those who believe that the timing will find them. We call those are, there's the waiters, right? The ones that they're trying to time the market, and the waiters are wondering if the market is as low as it can go, right? They're wondering if the market is as low as it can go. Now, does everybody have a notebook in front of them?
Yep.
Or I'm gonna need a volunteer. Perfect, awesome, I love that. So you guys can't see this, right? I have my notebook here, and I'm actually gonna write on my notebook, and I want you to tell me when you believe that as I'm writing, right, that when you believe the market is at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell me, are you gonna do it, Eileen?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
Tell me to stop at any time.
Stop.
Okay. So if you can see that, we have a line here and we're still not at the bottom, it's just going down. Right, we're gonna try that again. I'm gonna keep going. Tell me when you think the market's at the bottom.
No, stop. Did I make it?
No, so if you see that, we actually curved and we're going back up. Right, we're going back up. And that's the problem, is that a lot of times when the buyers are watching, we don't have a crystal ball, right? I don't know about you guys, but I don't have one hidden back here. I don't have one here on my desk. I don't got one hidden in my bedroom. Like, I have no crystal ball. When we look at what's going on from a market perspective, that's one of the exercises. I will tell you this, I've actually done that with a client, where I started writing on my paper and I said, okay, tell me when the market hits the bottom. And I've done that about 3 times with them to demonstrate that there is no way for us to know when the market hits the bottom. In fact, a lot of times, if you're actually sitting in front of them or they can see you a little bit more clearly one-on-one, they'll tend to say stop when they feel like you started writing up. And the problem is that that's what happens, right? Is that when we hit the bottom of the page and we start going back up, right? It's generally when the prices start going back up that buyers think, oh, we're at the bottom. No, we were at the bottom, right? Maybe we were at the bottom, but that's the thing, is that they always miss it because there's no way to tell. A buyer cannot perfectly time the market. No one can, right? No one can. And so it's really important that we look at that and we share that perspective with them, because we won't know the market has bottomed out until it starts back up. And we don't know that a market has peaked until it starts going down again, right? We can only anticipate based on certain factors that we're seeing where we might be. But it's the individuals that are buying in that safe zone, which is in the middle between the peak and the bottom. That safe zone is the area where the smart buyers buy. And it's up to us to really truly demonstrate that for them. And we have to have an understanding of buyer urgency, right? We have to have an understanding of buyer urgency. So if you look at what he shares on page 173, and I'll note, that chart, that graph, it's going to be a lot easier for you guys to see that. That's going to be on page 169 is where that starts. And it goes to page 172, where he shares that example of the graph and really asking your buyers to do that with you, right, as an exercise. Because I will note this, a lot of people were visual. We're very visual, right? And so you want to find ways to include your clients, especially when you're not sitting right there in front of them, to be able to demonstrate that for them, right? To be able to demonstrate that for them. So that chart is there so that they can kind of see the idea of what that safe zone looks like, right? And you're able to guide them through that. On page 173, he talks about buyer urgency. He says, understanding buyer urgency, its root cause and how to respond to a lack of it is imperative in a shift. When buyers are more reluctant than ever to make offers and more willing to walk away from signed contracts, you must be prepared. You must help buyers rediscover a sense of urgency. It's only buyers that are able, ready, and willing to buy a home ever actually buy one. Able, meaning they have the money, and ready, but waiting, right, instead of willing, may or may not buy a home. So we really want to have an understanding of their ability, their readiness, and their willingness. We want to know the buyer's ability to buy a home. So this is essentially the ability to buy a home is going to have to do with their financial capacity to purchase the home, right? Are they able, do they have all cash, right? Might be that start. Are they going to be an all cash buyer and they have the ability to purchase cash? If they need to get pre-approved, right? Do they fall within the range of being able to get pre-approved, especially with as the regulations have changed a little bit right now, right? Do they have the credit score? Are they able to get and be approved for a loan? Do they have the financial means right now? Do they need any type of assistance? And if so, do they qualify for those programs right now? That's the ability, right? Is we really want to have an understanding of their financial capability to purchase and their credit worthiness to purchase. The second thing we really want to know, oh, sorry guys, let me, all my phones ring on my computer, you guys, so my apologies on that. I thought I had it on Do Not Disturb. So the second piece that we want to really have an understanding of is their readiness to buy. So their readiness to buy, right? We have the financial capacity, the ability. The readiness to buy is the actual motivating reason for them to purchase a home. So they're ready to make a purchase because they want to build equity and they don't want to rent anymore. And so that's one of the things, that's the reason that they're ready to buy right now. They're ready to buy because they need to sell their home and they're either upsizing or downsizing, right? They're ready to buy because they need to relocate, right? They're ready to buy because they want to find a better school district for their kids. This is the motivation question. Are they ready? Are they mentally motivated and are they ready to make a purchase? What is that personal reason, right? What is that personal reason? And then the third thing that we need to have an understanding is their willingness to buy. The willingness to buy. This is the sense of urgency, right? This is, are they willing to make a move right now, right? Are they willing to make a purchase right now? And this is going to be the one that is most impacted when it comes to a shift. Now, I'll note, the first one, their ability to purchase is also impacted, especially right now. We have people, but here's the difference. The ability to purchase and the willingness to purchase, the ability to purchase is a condition. The ability to purchase is a condition. They actually have the right circumstances, the right condition to have the ability to buy. They have stable income. They have the credit score, right? That's a condition. If anything changes, the credit score changes, right? They lose their job and now they can't get pre-approved. They don't have enough financial reserves in order to pay a down payment and they can't get approved for any resources. That changes their ability. And yet there's generally nothing that we can do as it relates to their ability besides putting some type of plan in action for them and staying in contact with them until they regain the ability to buy, right? So that's a condition. Whereas when we look at the willingness, right? And here's the same thing with their readiness, right? There are some things that come up when it comes from a readiness perspective with their motivation is, let's say they were going to relocate and now they're not relocating, right? They had a job offer and they no longer have that job offer. Those are conditions, but for the most part, usually their readiness has to do with some type of personal reason. The willingness is different. The willingness has to do with more of where their head is at in the particular moment when they're ready to buy, right? The willingness is yes, I am able, I'm ready, and I want to make a purchase right now. And when you come into a shifted market and the media is saying X, Y, and Z about what's going on, what happens? Buyers get nervous, right? There's a fear factor that comes into place. They feel uncertain, and so they're no longer willing. Now they're waiting, right? Because they want to wait until it feels better. They want to wait until the circumstances are certain, right? Until there's more certainty. And yet that's the one piece that we really need to have the ability to help. Not necessarily, we can't necessarily change someone's motivation, but we can educate them to a better understanding to see if they might be ready to move forward, right? But that's going to be the piece that's going to be really, really important. And so when we really think about that factor, I want to note there's a couple things that we really want to have an understanding of. If you don't have all three, you don't have a pending home sale coming at any point, right? They're not a qualified lead. And we've talked about that before, is that part of it from a lead generation perspective is that we're going to have to find more leads to do the same amount of transactions, because less of the leads are going to be able, right? Some of the reasons that they were originally ready might have changed, right? And third and foremost is that we really have to find the ones that are also motivated, that are willing to move forward. And so if the circumstances have changed, the conditions have changed, that means that our lead pool of those that originally fell into that category, if the leads were, if there was this many, now there's half, right? Because that's just a fact of what is happening right now, is that, there are people that literally cannot afford to make a purchase because of things that have changed in their personal circumstances. And so there are less people that are able and ready. And of the ones that are, we need to find the ones that are willing and help motivate the ones that are waiting. And so we want to make sure we have a firm grasp of the personal reasons. We have to have the motivation, because I will say this, you absolutely can't take somebody from waiting to willing to move forward if you don't know why, what their personal motivation was behind them potentially making a purchase in the first place, right? Because logic makes us think and emotion makes us act. So we always have to be able to come back to that initial motivation, right? Initial motivation. So one of the things Gary talks about is, he says, it really, when it comes to the buyer ability, their readiness, their willingness, it really adds up to one key decision. Are they the lead worth investing our time, money, and efforts when all of our resources are already stretched? Okay. So I'll note, it's interesting that in a regular market, when we talk about handling objections, right? When we talk about handling objections, there's a lot of times where somebody will walk in and say, oh, the objection that I'm having is, I have these leads and they don't think they're financially ready to go. It's a credit score thing. Or they want to wait until, the market has changed. And yet there's a lot of times where we don't necessarily have a key grasp on the motivation they have, or the objections that we have is we want to figure out how to change their circumstances. And we can't do that, right? There's nothing we can do to change their circumstances. If you've got, 20 leads, and all of those leads, unfortunately, from a credit perspective, they are not able to move forward, then what do? Well, we team them up with our lender. We make sure we help them get into some type of plan of action in order to fix their credit, if that's the case, right? Then we put them on a drip campaign and we call them in 3 months. Right? But we don't spend all of our time, energy, and resources holding on to 20 leads that can't move forward right now. And too often, that's what we do, is all of a sudden we want to talk to that lead every week, and there's nothing they can do. They're not ready, right? They're not ready from a they're not able, right? They're not able. And so right now, I really want to drive that point home, Because if you spent time, you know, kind of nurturing extra time, and I don't mean don't spend time on them, I mean put them on a systematic communication plan, right? Throw them on a drip campaign, make sure they're getting contacted by you regularly via email, via drips, and then call them once a quarter to see how they're doing. What I mean is that the clients that you get now, if you didn't have the time to spend, to waste, right? Not necessarily investing in leads that weren't ready to go, you have even less of that right now because there's less leads out there, right? There's less leads that are gonna meet the 3 criteria. And so right now, more than ever, we have to make sure that we're making a decision when it comes to the leads that we have coming in and finding very quickly the runs that are ready, willing, and able, and focusing our energy on that. And that doesn't mean ignore the rest of your leads. I am one of the first people that will say every single lead you get is extremely valuable so long as you nurture it. I mean, put those on a nurture campaign and then focus on the ones that are ready, willing, and that are able, ready, and that you can help to motivate them on their willingness perspective. Those, what we need to get very, very skilled at is energizing buyer urgency. What we need to get very skilled at is energizing buyer urgency. And so Gary talks about 3 ways to do this, right? There's 3 ways to help energize buyer urgency for those that are able, ready, but that we need to get out of that waiting stage. Number 1 is becoming the local economist of choice. Is becoming the local economist of choice, right? What does that mean, right? What does that mean? That means that, you know, when it comes to the news that they're getting, a lot of times they're listening to what's happening on a national scale. And when someone, and I'll note, right, you guys have seen when I'll throw a chart up or I'll pull up some of the MLS statistics, or I'll pull up some of the trends that I want to show you guys, and putting a trend report up on the screen and interpreting it and giving you the grocery market pitch, right, of how to have an understanding of that is very different, right? Is that you may, if you've been in real estate for a long time, then you might have an understanding of what is the insight that comes from seeing increased days on market, right? What happens when we see a sales absorption change, right? What happens when we start to, like, what does it really mean when there's an increase or a decrease or a limited amount of inventory, right? Now, if you start talking that language to your clients, what happens? Right? I saw Claudia do it. It goes over their heads, right? It goes over their heads because they're not in this industry. That's where we really, when it comes to being the local economist of choice, we want to help them interpret the data that's out there and provide insights about how this is going to impact them, right? So I'll give you an example because I do this too, right? From a market perspective, is we see real estate news sites and they post a lot of real estate news and it says, oh, this happened and X, Y, and Z stock price went up, and oh, you know, so-and-so's experiencing layoffs or whatever's going on. And it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of noise. And yet we have to think critically about, okay, what are the questions that are going to impact someone on that? And so I do that at how does this impact an agent level? You guys need to do that in terms of how does this impact you from a market perspective. I talked to somebody and they said this is the grocery store pitch, or you can call it the Starbucks pitch or whatever that might be, right? But what is the number 1 question that we get when somebody asks us, you know, when somebody sees that we're wearing a name tag or we have a shirt that says real estate on it, right? And we're standing in line at the store and you're in a line. What is the number 1 question?
How's the market?
How's the market, right? And I will say this, guys, your clients don't want to know, you know, well, days on market are really high and we've seen inventory tighten up and we've seen X, Y, and Z, right? Those are facts. Those are facts that it's great if you have that understanding. And yet what they're looking for is, how does this impact me? When they ask you that question, there's 2 reasons they ask it. One, I don't know who went out into the world and made that the number 1 script that a client or a potential regular person was going to ask when they met a real estate agent. And yet that is the number one question that we get. But the number one reason that they're asking you that question is because they want to know what impact it has on them, right? If they're a homeowner, they want to know if their home value is going up. That's why clients go on Zillow and look at the Zestimate, right? The Zestimate is like the Fitbit. We look at the Fitbit because we want to know if we stepped more today than we did yesterday, right? That's all we want to know. And so when somebody goes and looks at a Zestimate, they want to know, is my home worth more today than it was yesterday, right? If they're thinking about selling, they want to know if it's a good time to sell, right? If they're a renter, they might be asking because they've been paying rent for a long time and they want to know if they could potentially buy a house or if it's a good time to buy, right? Or they've just been watching the news and they're curious, right? And they're curious because they're not sure if it's a good time to buy. And so when it comes to being the local economist of choice, that means that we really need to have a way to overcome the media-driven connotations of real estate, right? And we want to be able to provide insightful ways of thinking through real estate, right? We want to provide an insightful way of looking at real estate. And so this could be, when we become the local real estate economist of choice, this could be that we're providing them with neighborhood insight, okay? And here's the thing, here's the amazing thing about being the local economist of choice, you guys, is that you don't necessarily have to be 100% versed in everything that the market tells you, right? You don't have to be 100% versed in having the numbers on you 24/7 and knowing what's going on. Being able to provide them insight about the market could be as easy as sharing a neighborhood snap from Kelly. Might that not be some local information, and now you're borrowing credibility from the neighborhood snapshot, right? Might it be sharing your app and being able to help them see what their neighborhood is doing, right? Might being the local economist of choice be doing a quick video about what that snap means, right? Being able to say, hey, why don't I invite you to my newsletter? One of the things that I want to share on this is that I want you to utilize what's available to you to be the local economist of choice, and that's the market snapshots, right? This could be, but I also want you to look at how can I systematically do this? What's the system that I can put in place to do this, right? And so I'll give you an example. I got off a call with a friend of mine from the Milwaukee Market Center earlier today, and we were talking a little bit about, what this looks like for us on a market center level, right? And so one of the things he shared, and that's where we started talking about the grocery store pitch, is that there could be a lot of data out there, but we want to make sure that if you were in the grocery store, that it's something that's really comfortable, really easy for you to share, right? Really comfortable, really easy for you to share. And so when it comes to some of the data or some of the information you can share, putting somebody on a neighborhood drip where they're getting insight into their personal neighborhood, that is being the local economist of choice, right? Giving them information, giving them an app that is giving them neighborhood information, that's the local economist of choice. But let's go one step further. What if every single week, if there's certain neighborhoods or a certain farm area that you work, or certain neighborhoods that are important to you, what if every single week you did a neighborhood snapshot Facebook post about what's going on in your neighborhood? How easy is that for us to create with designs, right? You can do a Facebook post, an Instagram post, a social media post that is giving specific indicators about the neighborhood. And it's going to give a lot of data. So then you have 1 to 2 sentences that's giving insight that you've gleaned from that. So that could be that and I'll note, so something that I was looking at earlier, while inventory has started to shorten up, while listings have started to decrease, right? While under contracts have started to decrease, the price point has actually not gone down on solds right now, right? The price point actually hasn't gone down on solds. And so I could pull up 6 charts that will give you that information, right? Straight off of the MLS or through, you know, different resources. And yet the one thing that the client wants to hear is, while inventory has tightened up, right now might still be a great time to sell because price points are high, right? Or on the flip side, for the buyer perspective, right? Because price points are high. So how does that help me from a buyer perspective? It might be, you know, while price points remain stable, right? While price points remain stable, interest rates are at an all-time low, and buyer competition has lessened, so you have more of a chance to get into your dream home.
And concessions have increased.
Exactly, and concessions have increased, absolutely, right? That may be why we've got price points that have stayed high, right? And yet there's concessions on the other side of that. Right, so the data, you interpret the data to be the local economist of choice, how you see fit, and all we need to look at is, okay, what is the data? Because the data is what it is, and then there's a story around it, and what is that, right? How can you best explain what's happening in the market right now so that your clients have an understanding, right? So that your clients have an understanding, and so maybe that's a systematic post that you share once a week, right? And maybe you're also doing, maybe what you're also doing is a video, right? A video once a week, right? A video once a week, because we know that the market's changing very, very quickly, right? So what are the systematic ways that you can become the local economist of choice? And part of the reason I talk about system, you guys, is because, you know me, I like there to be something that we can actually implement from what we learned. Right, I'm all about the systems on it. So I think that this particular one on being the local economist of choice is very, very powerful when we're talking with our potential clients and we're working to motivate them to make some type of decision and take some type of action. Number 2 way to energize buyer urgency, tapping into their why. So this is where we get back into, why were they choosing to make any type of move? Is it because they got a new job, right? That may be something that's been affected by a condition right now, right? Are they having a new baby? Maybe they just got married. Maybe they're looking at retiring. Maybe they want to be closer to family in certain places, right? Maybe this has to do with a divorce, or they need to upsize, or whatever that is. We want to make sure that we're asking that question of, why are they thinking about buying? And if you have never asked that question before, then you're missing the boat, right? Because that's one of the #1 questions that we ask when we're having a conversation. And what I want to urge you is, right now that we're working through some of these pivot scripts, right, that are a little bit different, don't forget that fundamentally, we need to know what their motivation is. And we need to be able to tap into their motivation, because again, logic makes you think, right? Emotion makes you act. And so what happens when we pair the 2 of those? When I can demonstrate to a client logically, right, that right now might be a good time to move forward, and then tap into the emotional reason they wanted to move forward, is the logic will give them the justification to move forward and help you start to overcome their buyer reluctance, right? You know, interest rates are at an all-time low. Prices are stable. You know, there's a lot of concessions. There's less competition right now, so that you truly have the potential to get into your dream home. And I know how important that was for you, because I know that you wanted to really start a life with your family and make sure that your daughter had her own bedroom and that you were in a great school district. And so why don't we go ahead and move forward right now, right? And now we've paired the local economics, the interpretation, the insight, and we've tapped into their motivational reason why. You have to use both, right? We have to use both. And then the 3rd one is overcoming buyer reluctance, right? Overcoming buyer reluctance. So when the market changes, we know that it can throw people off balance and they get a little hesitant to move forward. It can be a little frustrating, and yet we want to be able to show them it's okay and give them that permission to buy right now. So we know that unless the right time to buy the right home is always, and unless they're a psychic or a gambler, right now is a great time to buy. Right now is a great time to buy. So it's really important that we can help to guide our clients through that, and that we're using those tools that we've been given to help with our clients' motivation. Here's the second part of that, right? Is you don't just ask once. ABCs, right? Always be closing. I love Marta's home office right now. I'm just throwing that out there. All of your beautiful faces. I love being able to see them and see you guys looping in. So I love it. But yes, so it's just really important that we build in from that a combination of both that logical perspective, and that we also tap into the emotional perspective, and that we also adjust our scripts as it pertains to the client. So I do want to share, there's the script that I would say as you're calling through your buyers specifically is going to be a really important one to use, right? A really important one to use is going to be the hold off on buying a home script, right? Which comes from curiosity, leading from the heart, showing understanding for their circumstances, and a first. So here's where it starts. It's tell me why you don't want to buy a home right now. Because we want to get to the meat of the reasons that the client has of not making a move right now. And it's I understand that reason, of course, and I know you want to, and you're going to insert their motivation. And I know how important it is for you to, have lower payments for your family. I know how important it was for you to get into a great school district. And I know how important it was for you to, be moved to Orange County where, you were going to be closer to your job. I know how important it was for you to decrease your commute so that you could spend more time at home. That I want to say something right there. Decrease our commute or little things like that are usually not the main reason. It usually has to do with something else, right? So dig deep to get the right motivation. Remember that there's surface level motivations, and then there's the emotional impact it's going to have. And so we want to really dig deep to that, and we want to get to that meat of what their motivation is. So a lot of times when somebody says, I want to decrease my commute or whatever that might be, the actual true motivation might be, I need to decrease my commute because, right now I'm traveling an hour and a half in either direction, and I have a daughter at home, and I want to make sure that I have more time to spend with my kids. And so I need to decrease my commute so that I can be closer to work, but also so I can get home to spend more time with my children, right? That's a true motivation, right? We want to downsize. And why do we want to? We want to downsize because, the maintenance, it's costing us too much. And from a financial perspective, we don't know if we can handle the maintenance. And we want to make sure that we're just feeling financially secure. And so we really need to downsize to something, or here's another one is, we want to move to something smaller from somebody that's in a 2-bedroom and older. I'm sorry, not a 2-bedroom, a 2-story and older. And they're thinking of the future. Well, I really want to, we want to downsize into something that's 1 story because we want this to be our forever home. And we know that we may not be able to go up and down, for long. And we just want this to be a really great place for us. So always get into that meat of the motivation, and then get back to that when you're going through the script, right? I understand the reason, whatever that reason is, that they don't want to move forward right now. And of course, I know how important it is for you, to get into a 1-story home so that, you and your wife are not having to continually go up and down the stairs. And I would love to be able to help you with that, right? And they may say they don't want to go into homes and they don't want to look at houses. And so this is where we can get into a couple of the things that we know are applicable for them right now. I respect where you're coming from. And I just, as your agent, doing my fiduciary duty, I want to make sure that I share a couple of things with you. I wouldn't be doing my job. The interest rates are at a 60-year low. Don't you agree? This is the rock bottom interest rate from all indicators, right? This is the rock bottom interest rate from what we're seeing. Wouldn't you agree? For conversation's sake, let's think about this. What happens if the rates jump even just 1% back into the 5s? Can I share with you what that will reduce your purchasing power to, right? We want them to have an understanding of how purchasing power is affected by their interest rate. Since you want to buy a home, because of X, Y, and Z, back to their motivation, what if you consider staying open? Would you consider staying open to a purchase? And we can at least initially look at some homes together online virtually. And if you virtually see something that you're absolutely interested in that meets your criteria, then we can figure out the safety issues so that you can see the home. Would that be something that you consider? Right? Would that be something you consider? So we want to open up that option to them. And in order to open up that option to them, again, we have to get back to the motivation. Because I will say this, if you go in and you talk to somebody right now, you're just like, well, we could see homes virtually. I'm thinking logically, no, it's not safe. I don't want to be stressed out right now. I'm not trying to look, right? But if you're like, hey, I know how important it was for you to get into a home that was going to be in a great school district from your daughter. And I truly believe that right now could be a great time to do that because the interest rates are so low. And if they jump, you might not be able to afford, you might miss the opportunity to get into that better school district because you might not be able to afford that purchase price anymore. So what if we just stayed open to the possibility and we looked at some homes virtually, and if you find one that you really love, you know, then we can potentially look at what the safety issues would be around that, right? And if you don't find anything, that's okay, but at least we start the process, right? That's very different from, hey, what if we look at homes virtually, right? This is like scripts are so important. And then also there's another bonus that's always a possibility that there's going to be some sellers who have to sell right now. And the price could be a great opportunity for you and your family. And I really don't want you to miss that opportunity because I know how important this is to you and your family. I'm going to be looking at homes every day anyways, and I can be in touch regularly for you. How does that sound? Okay. Thanks for being open, and I promise you I will always respect your decision. Right? So again, it's about coming to their motivation, right? It's about coming to the motivation. I will make sure that, so this script, this is the pivot script. I know we've posted this one already, but definitely take a look at this one specifically, the hold off on buying a home script. And I will know you guys, I know you guys have heard the script, right? I know we hear it. Keep it in front of you. I promise you guys, it's because we can say something that's really similar to it and it not have the punch that it needs to because we missed the motivation aspect, or we missed the tag along question, right? Or we missed an important piece that just comes from the heart, or comes from the compassion, or comes from, or maybe it's a little bit too much, right? So the scripts were written in such a way to guide the clients to the answer that we want, right? And to reaffirm the motivation that they have and to help move them forward. And so I want to make sure that's one that we're you know, spending some time on. So any questions before we kind of move to that next piece? No. Okay, awesome. I love seeing your beautiful faces. Thank you guys for being on camera with me. I feed off of that energy and the smiles over there, you guys. Okay, so on page 188, you know, Gary talks about the 4 strategies that we have, 4 strategies to overcoming buyer reluctance, right? The 4 strategies to overcoming buyer reluctance. The first is the why wait strategy, which has to do with the hazards of timing the market, right? The hazards of timing the market. This is for the buyers that choose to wait until the prices come down more, right? And they're also gambling that the interest rates will hold steady or drop, right? They want the price to come down and interest rates to stay the same or to go lower. Now, they don't really understand the impact that interest rates can have on the real monthly cost of homeownership. And so this is where it's going to be really important. So the scenario given here, given this is not our price point, right? This is not our price point, and yet it's to give you an idea. On page 189, he shares a scenario of a home price that's at 200K, right? A 200K price point at a 6% interest rate with a monthly payment of $1,199, you know, $1,199. And what we see is that when the interest rate, let's say home prices decrease by 5%, right? Home prices decrease by 5%. So that same 200K home is now 190K, right? But the interest rate increases by 0.5%. That's going to be a 6.5 interest rate. Now we're looking at a payment in a monthly payment of $1,201, right? $1,201. So you've got a home that is worth 5% less. The interest rates change 0.5%, and their payment actually increased. Right? Their payment increased. And so if they could only afford a payment of $1,199 or $1,200, right, then their payment's going to increase a little bit. Now, that's not going to be the biggest increase yet at this price point, right? Because we're at a really low price point, right? But if we look at scenario 2, where home prices decrease by 10%, interest rates increase by 1%, now the price point on the home is 180K, right? 180K, so 20,000 less. The interest rate is 7%, and the payment is 1,198. So in these 3 scenarios, the payment is almost identical, right? The monthly payment that they're making is almost identical, and yet the price of the home is less, meaning they can afford less home. More of their money is going towards the principal than is, to the interest than is going towards the principal on the home, right? More of the money is going towards interest that is going to the principal. So whereas in scenario 1, right now, they could buy a home that was worth 200K with the same payment. When the interest rate goes up 1%, they're buying a home that's $20,000 less. And that's at a 200K price point. We start looking at this in bigger price points, that impact is more significant, and we're in a higher price point, right? We're in a much higher price point. We're between double to almost triple of this price point here, right? And so that 1% is going to make a much bigger impact. And that's assuming, this is assuming that the prices will drop at this particular rate that they're looking at. And yet what we know to be true right now, what we've seen, now this may change, right? This may change as we continue to see some of the different economic indicators. But what was one of the predictions that was made by one of the chief economists for CAR, was they were anticipating over time, specifically in the California market, right, maybe a single-digit price correction, around 6% was what they were anticipating over time, that we might see over the next year, right? And yet, if interest rates start to go up, then the amount of home that the client can afford is going to be a lot less. So it's really important that we have an understanding of how to showcase this to our clients so that they can have a true understanding of what's going on in the market and why right now might not be the right time to wait. And we also have to have an understanding of what this looks like, right? The second strategy to overcome buyer reluctance is going to be the trade up. It's the opportunity of a down market. So here's what this looks like. Let's say that we're selling a home, right? And we know that right now is the opportunity for, if I'm a seller, right? And we know that prices are still stable right now from what we're seeing on the trends. In fact, we're still in a pretty good price point. It hasn't fallen significantly. So right now is potentially still a great time to sell, right? Right now is the time to sell, because we can sell before we see prices potentially fall even more. And yet we know that when we're pricing into a falling market, right, when we're pricing into a falling market, if I sell here, and let's say a month from now, 2 months from now, when I'm buying, the market has fallen more, right, and yet interest rates are still low, well, now I have the ability to get more bang for my buck. Right, so you have the ability to get more bang for your buck as a buyer that is looking at potentially trading up. So let's look at that. If home prices, let's say that they sell a home, the home price is 200K, they sell at 190 at a 10K loss, right? But then they're purchasing a home that maybe would have been at 400K, and they're able to purchase it at 380 because they were upsizing, right? Now they've gotten a $20,000 savings. So they're able to trade up. A buyer's market is an opportunity for them to trade up. All right, a buyer's market is an opportunity for them to trade up. Right? That's going to be the second potential strategy for overcoming buyer reluctance. And then he talks about less is more, just narrowing the field, right? So this is about narrowing choices. Now, I will say this. I am somebody who I met an agent once upon a time, a long time ago, that was sharing, you know, how many homes they would show to their buyers. And there was one person, and I don't know if this was in a social media group that I met them or what, but they were sharing their experience, and they're like, yeah, I showed one buyer 40 homes. I was like, oh my gosh, that seems, and I was like, is this what real estate is? Right? I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I met somebody else, and they told me, they're like, yeah, I set a script with every single one of my clients, and I let them know, you know, the first time we go see properties, we're going to see about 3 properties, and we're going to put an offer in on one. You know, and if that doesn't stick and we absolutely, one doesn't work, then he goes, I sit them back down again, right? And we tighten up the buyer consultation, and I ask them the question. If they're not ready to put an offer in after the first set of showings, I say, hey, Mr. Buyer, you know, we saw these homes, and it seems like I only show homes that absolutely fit your criteria, and you don't want to put an offer in on one. So where are we in misalignment on the criteria, right? And so then second time they show homes, and it's like, okay, we're putting in an offer, right? There was a different expectation that was set with those clients than, hey, I'm going to show you 3 homes that we're putting in an offer, in terms of, oh yes, I'll show you as many homes as you like, right? I want to make sure that I have my consultation, I need to learn how to turn off that setting. My apologies on that. And so those are 2 very different mindsets right now, right? Because what we know, I also had somebody that told me, you know, only show 3 homes, maybe 4 at most, right? But generally about 3 homes, because by the time we get to the 4th home, they can't even remember the first one, because there's too much choice. And what happens when we have too much choice? It becomes very difficult to make a decision. And yet when you show somebody 3 potential properties and they have a good, better, best option, they're generally going to pick one, right? Especially when they start comparing it from a price point perspective. And so one of the things right now when we look at less is more is that there's potentially less homes that they're going to see. They're going to be viewing a lot of those virtually, right? And yet it's probably going to be a lot easier to make a decision, and there's going to be less competition. And so they have the opportunity to gain a better choice, right? And to see something that truly fits their criteria. And so we want to help our buyers reduce the number of choices so that they can actually truly make a move forward, right? This is where the conversation comes around. You know, I really wanted you to have an opportunity to see this home. This home meets all of our criteria that we talked about. And I think that this is the home. It's right in your price point, and it meets the 3 things that you told me were the absolute most important. And so I really think this is the one. Take a look, and then let's go ahead and write up an offer. Language is very different there too, right? Language is very different there too. Right? So it's really important that we set that expectations, and that we want to make sure that they understand the value in making a decision and moving forward as quickly as possible, right? That's an expectation piece. And I will note, if you are not doing a buyer's consultation with your clients, right? If you've not done a buyer's consultation with your clients, then you're missing a crucial step in this piece, right? And you're missing a crucial step in this piece. And then the last strategy, the 4th strategy for overcoming that reluctance, it's finding a best buy. Getting while the getting's good, right? Getting while the getting's good. Essentially, what is that? It's the less is more theme that helps us overcome by having a best buy list. So what is the potential that they could potentially get a deal right now, right? And what I mean by a deal is I mean a home that fits their criteria, and maybe it's not a steal, right? It's not super on sale, because what do we know? If it was a steal, it's already gone, right? If it was a steal, it's already gone. But they do have the potential to get a potential property right now, right now, while there's not as much competition on the market. right? So they have the potential to get their best buy. The other piece on this is a piece that's also been used for marketing is the idea of creating a best buy list, right? A best buy list, not best buy like the store, but like an opportunity for them to see some of the best buys. This piece right here. So again, this book was written in 2009. This best buy list is where on your agent, your KW Command agent websites, this is where the price reductions in the last 7 days page came from, right? Is you can give that to your clients without doing a lot of work on it. You can find them a list specific to a particular neighborhood right on your agent website, right? That's going to show them all the properties that have had a price reduction in the last 7 days, that are all your best buy properties without having to do much extra work, right? Because we want to make sure that we have a good reason for creating this buyer urgency, right? And those are going to be some of the tools. Now I'll note, I'm going to share one additional tool on buyer urgency that is not in the book, because it's something that's unique to the times right now. When they wrote this book back in 2009, there was no way for us to know the circumstances under which we would be right now, right? The circumstances under which we would be right now. And so one of the tools that's going to be available is the COVID addendum, right? The COVID addendum. If you have not read the COVID addendum, if you have not looked at it, I would highly recommend that you do two things during your buyer consultations right now. And one I'm going to get more into probably on our morning call tomorrow. But there's two things that you need to be doing during your buyer's consultations right now. One is, as you go through your buyer's consultation, as you work on, helping them to overcome their buyer reluctance, is you get a COVID addendum signed as well as an agency agreement, right? A buyer agency agreement. I know that for many, many years, the buyer agency agreement has been optional. I think that was probably one of the worst things. Well, I'm not a big fan of that potential practice. I think I've always believed that it's extremely important for us to get a buyer representation agreement to protect your role, right? It's long been, it's kind of been a misunderstanding that the buyer doesn't pay for the compensation of the realtor. That's actually not true. When we look at, the agreement, technically the buyer is meant to pay and the seller can subsidize that. That's where the selling agent commission comes from, right? But a buyer agency agreement, first and foremost, aside from the commission part of it, first and foremost, what the buyer agency agreement does is it protects you from wasting your time, energy, and resources on someone that is not willing to work with you. It's going to do a little bit more now, right? But I'll talk about that. But the buyer agency agreement is extremely important. And if you do your buyer consultation in such a way that you truly go in depth with your customer, they will have no hesitation signing the agency agreement as a part of the process, right? As a part of the process. This is why I'm very big on doing an agency agreement where, for me, I use for all of my sales side of it, I use the Ignite buyer consultation to go through the questionnaire, right? With the agency agreement after the consultation, right? And now the piece that you're gonna add on that is gonna be the COVID addendum. You wanna review that COVID addendum with them and the protection that it puts in place for them if something happens during the course of them making a purchase as a result of COVID-19 that prevents them from moving forward with the purchase of their home, right? That's going to protect their earnest money deposit. It's going to protect them from having to move forward with the purchase. And so that is a tool for you. Not only is that a way that you're doing your fiduciary duty and protecting your client, but it is a tool for you to help overcome buyer reluctance. The second part of that on the agency agreement. If you've not gotten agency agreements before, now is 100% the time to start, specifically because of the clear cooperation agreement that goes into effect May 1st. I'll cover that more in depth on our call tomorrow morning, right? Because I want to make sure that I go into that and spend a good amount of time. And I know we are coming on time here. And it's going to be really important so that you are protected in the event that you want to show your clients homes that, you know, maybe are not completely on the market yet. And so I want to make sure that we go into that a bit more in depth. But at the end of the day, guys, the most important thing right now is that there are clients that absolutely want to buy. There are absolutely clients out there that are able to buy. The way that we work with them is just going to be a little bit more creative, right? We need to get really skilled at moving through their reluctance, right? And helping to get them to a place where they're ready and able and willing to make a decision to move forward. So if I was to say, you know, if I was to give you guys any homework aside from reading some of the pages, I would say a couple of the things is, what tools are you using to show your database that you are the local economist of choice, right? What tools are you using to show your database that you are the local economist of choice? How are you implementing that in a systematic way? Is that, and write a list on how you're going to implement that, right? Is that your market snapshots? Is that your biweekly neighborhood nurture, your mobile app? Is it also market snapshots that you're posting on social media once a week? Is it a video that you're doing once a week, right? And sending to your database? What does that look like, right? What's that system? If the messaging that they're hearing is that right now is not a messaging are you providing to your database? What messaging are you providing to your database? Right? What does that look like? And what message do you choose to provide to your database? So one, what are the systems and tools to show your database you're the local economist of choice? What is the message you're going to communicate to your database, and how to show them that right now is a good time to buy a home? And are you utilizing the scripts that you should be using so that you can stay consistent with that? And then what tools do you have in place right now and systems do you have in place right now to show your clients homes virtually? And if and when they're ready and they've signed the PEAD agreement to go ahead and property entry and disclosure for COVID as well, what tools do you have in place to be able to actually go and show them a home should they choose that at the next step, right? So that you can make sure to protect their safety. So I know a couple of you guys have gotten booties and gloves and face masks specifically for your clients, right? And then how can you use your market knowledge to inform your buyers of the best options that they have and ensure their safety at the same time, right? So that's going to be the piece to work on. Questions? Questions? Since you guys are planning on implementing. Oh, I see the book being held up over there. Awesome. Awesome. Well, awesome. I know we went a little bit over about 6 minutes, you guys, so thank you for bearing with me. I'll make sure that the recording goes up as well. And then a couple things. So next session is going to be really interesting because we're going to go into some really some deeper things on the next session. So session 7, we're going to be covering page 197 through 240, and it's going to be financing and the market of the moment. So when we talk about that from a perspective of when this book was written in 2009, those 2 sessions were on 3 areas of creative financing. And then the second part of that was opportunities with REOs, right, with REOs. We'll go into what the markets of the moment are for this market, right, for the market that we're in right now. And so I'm going to spend some of the stuff we will go over exactly what's in the book, and some of what we're going to go over is going to be the markets of the moment that we're absolutely in at this moment in time. And so I want to share that, but that's going to be pages 197 through pages 240. All right, you guys? Awesome. I thank you as well. Thank you as well. And thank you for you guys being on video with me, because I loved being able to see you guys. That definitely makes me happy. So you guys have a good one. Bye. See you soon. Oh, and then, sorry, I forgot to mention, Eileen did post in the comments. She's going to be showing KW app and agent sites tonight at 6 p.m. So a lot of what we talked about, right? Those pieces that are going to be really important for you guys, she's going to be showing that today, KW app and agent sites at 6 p.m. So don't forget to log in. Awesome. Bye, you guys. Thank you, Eileen.